start streaming like this. You can watch it over here, you can watch on this screen.
So I can just sit here, right?
So,
Because she's not going to be here,
let
right?
me get on and introduce the event. Welcome everyone to Ignite Bountiful. This is quite the adjustment. Our previous events have been a lot more fun because we get to meet together. And so this one is all remote. We've got streaming going on so people can watch. But we've got a few of us who are presenting, and we're just going to all present remotely. First of all, I want to thank the Bountiful Voluntarist Group for some of the facilities to make this happen, and the organization to get this going. Just as a preview for those who haven't been here, we have 5 different topics from people in Bountiful, and this is all locally oriented, so the goal is to hear from each other and share ideas and hopefully open up conversations that will help us after this event. Unfortunately, tonight we don't have the skills sharing part because we aren't in the same place together. Let's hope that the next event in July, things will be open again and we'll be able to do that. Okay, without any further ado, we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. Our first speaker is Diane Matson, who will talk to us about This Is Where You Belong. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Diane.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Yes, my name is Diane Matson, and briefly about me is that I was born in California and raised in Oregon and Idaho. And I moved to Bountiful from Salt Lake, and I've been a Utahn in my whole adult life. And I'm proud to say that I'm from Utah. So when I moved to Bountiful, I had a realtor who I was working with, and he asked me, do you think that you'll live here longer than 5 years? Because that will depend on what kind of a mortgage that you get. And I thought, 5 years sounds so far down the road. So many things can happen to me in my life, so many changes. So no, I probably won't be here longer than 5 years. And because of that, I think I've always felt like a visitor in Bountiful. I felt like my stay here would be temporary. And I'm not from here. I don't have a family of my own. And so I just kind of been waiting for the day that I would kind of move on to something else. So that conversation with my realtor took place 16 years ago. That's how long I've lived here. And this past fall and winter, I just thought, hey, it's time for me to start trying to become a part of this community. And about that time, I was reading a magazine and I came upon this book right here. It's called This Is Where You Belong, Finding Home Wherever You Are by Melody Warnick. And this book just really spoke to me. It's exactly what I was looking for. So the author is a young mother. She's married with 2 small children, and their little family has moved a lot. And they moved from Texas to Blacksburg, Virginia, and that's when she wrote this book. Because when she moved there, she again was thinking, we're not going to be here that long. I don't need to get to know people that well. Little do they know, we're going to be leaving soon. And it turns out that the author and I are very similar with a lot of Americans. And she said that there is a website called City Data, and it's kind of like a Yelp for towns and cities. And it gets 22 million unique visitors every month on average. So there are a lot of people just searching for something better, searching for where they belong. But she teaches that you can belong where you are, and she gives well over 100 tips. And so I'm taking a cue from her and decided to do my own little experiment. And I just briefly want to state 3 things that I have done. I mean, there's so many in this book, but I just have a little bit of time tonight. So the first thing I did is I joined the Meetup app, and that's how I found out about this group. And it's exactly what I was looking for, just a small place to meet a few people and network and try and find out of ideas of how I can be involved in the community. So thank you to Trent Larson for this opportunity. And I've also done a few other activities on the app, and it's been fun. And the second thing is the author said, you know, grab some friends together and have a service project, something that will benefit the community. And so my friend and I are in the process of doing that. So I am pro-life, and I know that there's kind of a spectrum of what people believe when it comes to abortion, pro-life and pro-choice. And I said, I don't want to have an evening where it's like a politically charged evening at all, but I do want to do something that benefits the Salt Lake City Pregnancy Crisis Center. And so we're going to get our friends together, invite them to bring supplies that that center needs, and just state a few facts that maybe the average people don't know about abortion. And my friend said, no matter what people think, where their political beliefs are and their moral beliefs, we can all agree that we want to celebrate life and we want to support women and children. And so we think that this is going to be a really great evening. And the third thing, which I invite you all to network with me about if you would like, is my most favorite idea that she had in this book. And it was to have a cash mob. And I don't know if that's ever been done in Bountiful, but I've always had a special place in my heart for the local businesses. I live I live on Main Street in Bountiful. And I just love the little boutiques and the restaurants there. And what a cash mob is, it's advertised by word of mouth or through social media, and just a group of random citizens, whoever finds out about it and wants to attend, just goes to a set place, and the organizer says, all right, everybody, this is where we're going to have our cash mob tonight. And there are 3 rooms spending at least $20 in the store. Everyone needs to meet at least 3 new people, and everyone needs to have a good time. So the author in Blacksburg, Virginia, attended one in that town. There were 15 people who showed up, and they went to a kind of like a skater store, and people weren't super thrilled because there were older people in the group and mothers with infants. But the organizer said, oh, I know you might be nervous, but there's plenty of things. And so the author finally settled on a $20 t-shirt. And when she went to the cash register, the man just looked her in the eyes and just said so sincerely, thank you so much for doing this for us tonight. And the very first cash mob that ever took place was in Cleveland, where 50 people showed up at an indie bookstore, and they spent $900 that evening. And for example, there was one done in Wyoming at a country store where about 45 to 50 people showed up, and in under 1 hour, they spent over $4,000. And so the local businesses just have really appreciated that. And there's a website to go to that talks about how you can get one of these going. So I hope that by doing this and other things in this book, that I can get to the point in my life where I say, you know, I'm really proud to be from Bountiful, Utah. This is where I belong, and there's really no other place that I would rather live. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. Okay. Next, we're going to bring in Larry Mulcock, and he's going to talk to us about neurofeedback. Now, you'll notice that Larry and I are in the same place. We're being careful with our getting too close to one another. So in case anybody out there is worried about that, we'll bring Larry in right now.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Good evening. Thanks, Trent. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of an esoteric subject that you may not be familiar with. When I was starting to prepare this, I was thinking about how little we think about our brain. And yet there are so many things that can influence our brain physiologically, chemically, etc. And there are a lot of things we can do to improve our brains. I discovered in the early 80s that I had something called attention deficit disorder. Well, whatever that is, it's kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. But my wife was a nurse and did a lot of research, and she came across neurofeedback. It was in its infancy in those days, and but we got involved, and all of my kids had the same problem. So we've had some really interesting experiences with it. Neurofeedback, there's a couple of approaches to diagnosing issues that you might want to address with your brain. So this first picture, oops. What do I have to do?
Take 2 fingers and scroll.
2 fingers. Okay. The first way of diagnosing issues before treating with neurofeedback is called a SPECT scan, or it's kind of like it's actually a radiological examination. You take a dye, and then these cameras take multiple pictures of your brain, and it comes out kind of interesting. So here is a healthy surface SPECT scan. This is looking at the surface of the brain, and you can see that it's smooth and there's not a lot of indentations and so forth. And the SPECT scan is really not an anatomical kind of scan. It's a functional scan. So this is saying this brain is functioning pretty well. Another output, oops, sorry. There we go. Another output is this type of a output, which is kind of a 3D functional picture of your brain. And the blue part is normal. The red and particularly the white parts are overactive. And so these are target areas that might be useful in helping someone with a particular disorder be able to function better using neurofeedback. The other method for diagnosing neurofeedback is with, let me show you a couple things here first. Here's a SPECT scan of someone's brain with Alzheimer's. So what you can see is that there are large areas of the brain that aren't functioning. So again, this is a functional diagnosis. Here's one with somebody who has an addiction to marijuana. You notice how rough the surface is, that there are holes, and if you look through the holes, there are actually caverns inside that are not functioning. So it's a very interesting approach. It's also quite expensive, and so there's a less expensive approach using what's called, oops, try the arrow. There we go. So here's an example of, let's go back up. Here's a brain that had low blood flow. After neurofeedback, you can see that it restored the blood flow to the brain, and so it's much more functional and working. The other method of diagnosis is called electroencephalograms, or EEGs. And these little circles represent various parts, various places on your head where they place electrodes to then map your brain. And so they start with these electrodes that are hooked up to a computer, and it's kind of like wearing a swimming hat with all these little wires coming out of it. And then they measure the electrical activity between each of those points. And they're looking at different types of waves, wavelengths, and with that information, they can map your brain. This this is what the output looks like to a physician or someone who knows what how to use an EEG. But this is what the software now can do to create a map of your brain using EEG. So the colored circles represent certain parts of your brain, and the colors represent whether or not the frequency is high, low, or very low. So the right-hand row, the vertical row, is the EEG map of my oldest son. And you can see that in the beginning, his delta waves were very high, very abnormal. And so we recently, well, you can see the date on there, it's 8/14/2018. Brought him home from England, and he went through a 3-month regimen of neurofeedback. And the column on the left shows that there were significant changes as a result of that neurofeedback. I can't interpret that for you, but I can say that there were significant and noticeable differences in his ability to function and in his behavior. And so we know that neurofeedback, from personal experience, we know that it works. And let's see, what else do I have here? Here's a before and after using the SPECT scan. You can see that the hot spots have been reduced substantially, and bringing that brain down to a more normal functioning. So what is neurofeedback? Well, when I started neurofeedback in the early 80s, what you did is they would identify an area that you wanted to treat. They'd attach an electrode to there, to your ears to ground, and then you would sit in front of a TV screen, and there was a black horizontal line and a red ball below the line. And without touching anything, you use your brain to try and get that ball above the line. Well, it's kind of an interesting kind of experience. And as the ball goes up, the tone gets a little higher, and the goal is to try and keep it above the black line. Well, I had a real hard time staying with it because it was an hour session and it was so dang boring. I could hardly stand it. Fortunately, they've changed things, and today they have some much better programs. Essentially, you sit and watch a movie. And I haven't done this, so I don't know exactly how it works, but you are trying to manipulate some things on the screen with just thought and creating new neural pathways. So here's an area where he's being treated. And now they also have a much better audio system to go with it. So you do repeated sessions. This group that my son went through was about 3 sessions a week for, I think it was 3 months. And so he had a significant outcome, which is good. Now, today, in fact, just in April, another company came out with a new system, and it's basically a headband that you put around your head. It has sensors on the band, and then you hook up remotely with your phone to a practitioner somewhere else in New York, and then you conduct a neurofeedback session with your phone. And it's substantially less expensive, but apparently supposed to be very effective. Neurofeedback is an effective treatment for a lot of things. Here's a list: attention deficit, addictions, learning disabilities, depression, bipolar, PTSD, anxiety, all of these things. You can also use it for cognitive enhancement and peak performance training. It also, like everything, probably has a negative potential, but there's certainly a lot of reasons to be involved. So if you know someone or you are yourself are suffering from any of these issues, I would encourage you to explore neurofeedback as a possible part of your solution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Larry. Next up, we have CBD. What is it and what can it do for you? By Craig St. Clair, who runs the Aloha Nutrition here nearby in Layton.
Thanks, Trent. Are we on? We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. CBD, what it is and what it can do for you. CBD is cannabidiol. Cannabidiol is a phytocannabinoid, and the best source for it is agricultural hemp. Hemp is in the cannabis family of plants. Most people, when they think of cannabis, they're thinking of a short little flowery plant, often called marijuana. Hemp is a very different plant in the same family. It looks more like bamboo or maybe sugarcane or something like that. It grows 20, 30 feet tall. And so they are in the same family, but they're very different plants. The biggest difference as far as their the makeup of the plants is hemp is naturally very high in medicinal compounds like CBD and similar compounds, and very low in psychoactive compounds like THC, which is the main compound that marijuana or cannabis is known for. Cannabis is the opposite. It's very low in the medicinal compounds and very high in the psychoactive compounds. So if you source CBD from hemp, you don't get any of the psychoactive or any other strange effects from it. Just really good beneficial medicinal effects. So what CBD does essentially in the body is it has a dynamic effect on what is known as the endocannabinoid system or ECS system. The ECS system is a system in the body that tries to create homeostasis, or basically a balance in the body. In holistic medicine, we believe that if you have any kind of physiological issue, disease state, anything like that, it's from an imbalance. So balancing your endocrine system or other systems in the body has a very dynamic, beneficial effect on theoretically just about everything. So endocannabinoids and their receptors are found throughout the body. In each tissue, cannabinoids perform different tasks, but the goal is always for that homeostasis or balance. Hemp-derived whole plant, full spectrum CBD provides more than 520 beneficial compounds, not just CBD. There's a lot of close cousins to CBD like CBDA, CBG, CBN, the list goes on and on. There's also terpenes and a lot of other beneficial compounds in there. So when you use these all together, as opposed to just isolating CBD, such as what you might find in a pharmacy or something like that, you're getting what we call the hemptourage or entourage effect, where they all work together to provide an even more beneficial effect in the body. Also, CBD and its cousins and other phytochemicals are remarkably safe. They've been tested at even very high doses, much higher than what would be a typical effective dose with no real negative effects. So that's another great thing about CBD. Some of the benefits that people get from the whole plant CBD, pain is probably the biggest one. It's very effective for most people for all kinds of pain, joint pain, arthritis, muscle pain, nerve pain, things like neuropathy, even things like headaches, migraines, things like that. It's also very effective for tremors and seizures from things like epilepsy or brain injuries or other similar issues. It's wonderful for anxiety, stress, depression. It's very beneficial for sleep for a lot of people. And it's also very effective in small doses. So you don't need to take much. Even doses as small as 1 milligram can be beneficial for some people. It's very rare to find people that need to take more than maybe 15 to 20 milligrams more than once or twice a day to get the desired effect. There's many different forms available. You can get it in liquid, which you can use directly in the mouth or put in a beverage. It's also available in capsules in various potencies, and also a lot of topicals like balms, salves, creams, lotions, things like that. These can be really beneficial for pain in specific areas of the body also. CBD topicals have, for me personally, have been the most effective topical treatment that I've ever used. So in closing, CBD is a great medicine that can do a lot for you, that has no negatives. You basically have everything to gain and nothing to lose by trying it. It doesn't contraindicate anything, so it's safe for anybody to take. And it's also not really super expensive either. It's quite reasonable. So that's pretty much what I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Craig. Okay, we're going to go back to sharing our screen again. And next up, we have Bruce Jepson. Bruce Jepson is going to talk to us about a debt-free.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Okay. You just didn't get my last text. I didn't make the revision quick enough, so I'm chiming in to hear you. We can do it next time we get together. Did that make sense?
Okay, so you want me to go ahead first?
I want you to go ahead, and I won't be able to finish it for this meeting for this group, but I'll have it ready for next time.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
Then I'll jump to mine then. I'll turn on my camera. And if you can all see my presentation over there. Do you see that okay? Okay, great. This is entitled Learn, Love, and Vanquish Violence by Living Locally and Dropping Debt. I have a computer science degree. That's what my PhD is in. And I want to talk a little bit about my experience as well as some ideas for us to create a healthier world. So first, I challenge you all to dream of a world of abundance. Even nowadays, we're in a pandemic, but I believe it's a possibility. Think about first, how much does it take to really fulfill our needs? It's just these basics: foods, shelter, sleep, novelty, and other people. If we have those, how much on top of that do we really need? Big houses or boats or even expensive devices in our pockets? I would say that beyond that, we want creativity and passion, but can you all envision a world where we live in a place where we have the basics, but then we have lots more free time to be creative and to be with other people? So this is why living locally can help every one of us in our lives, especially with our mental health. One way to live locally is to use foods that are easier to prepare and maybe more basic. One way that everybody likes to eat out, but it becomes expensive, And it also, costs a lot when we have to ship it in from other places. Now, this does take a little bit of planning to do. So we have to be a little bit more mindful of how we plan our time, but it's also an activity that we can do together with our family. There's changes that we should make also locally, because there's zoning laws and other pressures where people want to preserve their property values and things like that. And then there's health regulations that really aren't appropriate because they encourage centralization of our food chain. And right now, especially, we're learning that we have to have a lot more local food. So I found this from the New York Times. It says, hey, if that candy thing doesn't work out, remember, you always have the dark, damp hole in the ground to come home to. Now, that is probably a negative in the mind of the one that's going out and distributing all the colorful Easter eggs. But think about it. A dark, damp hole, if it's a safe place for you to be, might not be so bad anymore. And that's how we learn to love even more. We build those relationships locally and spend more time with people around us. It definitely brings out conflict sometimes, but that's really how we learn what's most important in life. It's terribly easy to get distracted from that. One of the biggest reasons is because right now, just finding a place to live is very expensive. Even renting is very expensive, and it's hard for a lot of millennials now to find a place to go. Americans have always viewed large houses and urban sprawl as a measure of success, and banks are really good at maximizing how much you can afford and paying them. So drop debt, get out of debt, and you do have it as little of it as possible, because there's institutions that are profiting off of all of the centralization that has happened in the economic system. They're centralizing food production to make cheap, unhealthy food. And they offer, many more products in the stores than we even need. And a big part of it is our military industrial complex is using these justifications to war on foreign soil so that we protect our oil supply. Not good, especially when it's based on some of these pressures where everybody's indebted to a bank. I highly recommend the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman that explains how the US is doing this in a lot of other countries. So here's another comic that says, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for the shareholders. You know what? We aren't working for corporations. We don't want to. We want to be working for each other. So bring that back locally. And that's how we get rid of a lot of the violent pressures that are in the world. China, North Korea, they convince their people that big governments are necessary to fight all of these foes externally. But if we would stop doing wars outside our country, think of how much more peaceful the world would be. So we can turn back. We don't need as much debt as we're getting into. I also recommend the book Debt, the First 5,000 Years. It talks about how money came about and debt came about from militaries requiring tribute. We can heal if we'll focus on that individual need for passion and being interdependent with people in our own community. I am excited about Bitcoin and the possibilities of cryptocurrencies, and I think there's ways that we can build local community reputation, even credit with one another, but not based on debt. Another book I'd recommend, The Money, the Unauthorized Biography, that talks about how money is that credit system, and right now we're putting that all in the ownership of banks. Not healthy. This is a picture of St Croix, where my family spent a year, and we learned how in the islands, you don't have a lot of conveniences. So you end up doing a lot more activities. Think of how much more healthy that would be for our families if we didn't have some of the conveniences that we've had in the past. So let's save our world. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that following these, getting out of debt, would actually help. So focus on what is your individual passion, not institutions or consumerism or jobs, but what are you excited about? And how can you work on that with your community, not relying on some other institutions or trying to, encourage political safety all around the world, because safety is causing this push for a lot of the wars, I guess, is what I would say, outside of the US. Finally, a couple of squirrels. The mama squirrel comes home and says, "Can you help me bury the groceries all over the neighborhood?" I hope we will all do that. We will all start taking what we have and sharing it all over our neighborhoods. And finally, I'll leave you with these two questions. Think about what passions are you actively pursuing. The more you think about them, the more you will find somebody who has those same passions. And who do you want to work together with? Be on the lookout for people in your neighborhood that have those same interests. Thank you very much. Okay. So that is the end of our stream and our event. We're going to take some time at the end where the speakers will be able to converse a little bit, but I'm going to stop the streaming now. So thank you very much and look forward to the next.
Trent, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
This is Bruce. I didn't get my presentation all the way together, so just let me present what I have, because what you just talked about was so inspiring. I got to try, do the best I can.
Fantastic. We'd love to have you. Okay.
Okay. So just give me a heads up. I got 1 minute left, and I'll go to the bottom line. And right now, I am going to try to share the screen with you. And is it shared? It's not.
I do not see it.
Okay. Let me. We went through this the other night. Okay. Let me see how to do it. Oh yeah. I'm used to using Zoom. Okay. Oops. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and keep talking for a minute?
I'll try and talk you through this. In the bottom left-hand side is the little screen that if you click on, it should ask you what screens you want to share.
Yes, and then I go to application window, and then I go to my PowerPoint, and
and if that doesn't work, go ahead and click it and click to share the whole screen. That will
okay.
be easy.
So if I hit that and then I click to share the whole screen, however, I don't have the instructions below to share the whole screen.
Okay.
So, well, why don't you continue with your discussion? If the other guys are interested, and I really am interested, and give me a minute to play with this, and I'll see if I can get it.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to mute this for a second from our side. Actually, no, what I'll do is I will just ask a couple of questions while we're still online. So the first question I'll ask is I wanted to go back to Diane because Diane, you mentioned that book and that there were 3 different ways that you've tried it with the cash mob. And so are there any particular stores here in Bountiful that you were thinking that you'd like to do that cash mob?
Well, that's what I kind of wanted some help with. I mean, I love the little stores on Main Street, but I think there are probably some stores that I don't even know about that are here. And the book, or I think the website says to check with the Independent Business Alliance to show you where the qualifying shops are. And this website really suggests that you choose shops that give back to the community and are part of community organizations. So any of those little boutiques, though, on Main, I think would be great. There's the one, I don't know if it went out of business or what the situation is, but that little Touche store isn't there. I saw them being moved out the other day. I don't know. So I don't have a firm answer for you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, if you come up with a list of those, I would say the bookstore down there would be one I'd love to keep in business. Maybe we can, if you send a couple of ideas or other people on the group, send me ideas. I'll send them out and we can even have a vote and get that started.
Oh, that would be great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do have one other question, and that's for Larry, because I was impressed by some of the imagery that you showed. So I was wondering if you could tell us real quick what is a way that you can actually heal and, the brain. What are were there exercises, or what did it recommend to get that with better scans?
Well, there's a lot of other things you can do to strengthen or improve your brain. There's brain games, there's nutritional things, exercise gets lots better oxygen to the brain. So there's a lot of things you can do to improve your brain and take care of it. But this is the neurofeedback is kind of a makeover, in a sense, that it actually will change the pathways of your brain when you approach certain situations.
So neurofeedback itself is like exercises or something to help make it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In fact, the latest is that they actually have some neurofeedback programs that will actually give your brain a little shock through the electrode that's attached on your brain, which apparently tends to speed up the changing process. I mean, you probably can't feel it, but it's I haven't done that, but it's a very interesting idea.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you. Okay.
Trent, can you hear me still?
I can hear you, Bruce.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm going to get the presentation together. It looks like I got it together, but I can't share my screen. But I wanted to talk about what Larry was saying, neurofeedback. My brother is a psychologist, and he has a neurofeedback machine in his office. And I have Parkinson's disease, and I've done that several times, and it has definitely helped improve my Parkinson's disease. It's not the answer, but it has helped. So I would encourage anyone to use the machine if they can. And I'm sure if they have issues with finances or something, I could convert my brother into helping him.
Well, that's interesting. I'll add Parkinson's disease to the list.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, everyone. And I'll close down the meeting now, and we'll stay in touch on meetup.com, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.